Hello and welcome to this video from Inspire Cows, the channel dedicated to dairy health. My name's Mike Steele and I'm a dairy coach from Inspire Cattle Solutions. This video links to two others that I've done on dairy profitability. So today we're going to consider where profits come from and what profit is. In the other two videos we're going to look at the lactation curve and how profits affect that, and we're also going to look more deeply at the concept of marginal milk. When we're talking about profits for any business, the very simple way to look at it is simply income take away expenses equals net profit. Now in dairies we can consider yield take away the cost of feed equals the income over feed cost. Now the problem with that is that just takes into account the feed, but not all of the other things on the dairy like electricity and water and labour and all of the other things that you have to pay for. So a more relevant way on a dairy to look at profitability is like looking at it as a factory would or an industry would. And this is the price of the product, take away the cost of production, multiplied by the volume of the product. So in this case, the price of the product is the milk price. And we take away the cost of production, and that would include all of your labour and feed and the rest. And multiply that by the volume of milk that you sell from the dairy. Now that's not the volume of milk that you get from the cows, because some of it will have withdrawal due to antibiotics, or perhaps you sell some to neighbours or whatever. It's what you get paid for by the people that buy your milk. Now we'll come back to that in just a little minute, but for the moment I'm going to look at the terms that we use for profitability on the dairy industry. So the first term is cash flow. Now this is what determines what you can pay for right now. So cash flow determines how much money you have at a certain point in time. So you may know something's going to be more profitable, like redesigning your barn, but you don't have the money right now to pay for it. So cash flow can determine what we can actually afford to do at point to point in time. The next thing to look at is profit, and this takes into account a period of time. So it's what is going to increase your income over a period of time. So reproduction and fertility is a great way to consider this, because you may not have the cash flow right now to invest in, say, embryo transfer or sexed semen or timed artificial insemination. But if you do, then it's going to make us some money. However, with reproduction, then the time that we make that money back is when the cows have their calves. So that's at least 9 months later to the intervention, and over that next lactation period, so that's 305 days beyond that 9 months, plus 2 years later when those replacement animals grow up and increase the genetics of the herd and improve the profitability even further. So reproduction can be a really good way to increase profits. Now one area of profitability that we rarely look at is future compound profit. Now this one's a little more complicated, and I'll do that in another video in the future. But future compound profit still exists, and what this concept is if you are more profitable over a period of time and you stay profitable for more periods of time, then the percent interest you make on that one period of time can be multiplied by the interest that you make on the future periods of time, as long as you stay equally profitable. Now, this can be exponential and actually really make you more money for the future. However, not all farmers are sitting on Caribbean islands drinking cocktails. And this is because farming is very variable, and it depends on the environment and management and all sorts of other things. And future compound profit can also work in losses the same way round. But future compound profit's still useful because the longer we stay in the positive profit, the more money we make and the more profitable it becomes. So the point to take home from that is that we just simply make more money than we think we make over a period of time due to future compound profit. So let's go back to that picture of price, take away the cost of production, multiply by the volume of product. Let's look at how we can influence that. Can we influence it? So let's look at milk price first. Now we have very little influence on milk price because it's set by the buyer of our milk. However, we can still influence it slightly because sometimes people are paid on the components of the milk, for instance fat and protein, total solids. And we can influence those slightly. We can also protect that price because sometimes people are penalised by, say, high cell counts. If cell counts stay low, then we can protect getting penalised. So we can influence the milk price ever so slightly. Let's look at now cost of production. And we need to decrease these to increase profits. So this is all about efficiencies. So this is where we need to look at labour efficiencies, fuel efficiencies, and disease losses, disease efficiencies as well. And another way to influence cost of production is to increase cow numbers. But of course, we can't just do this. We need the space and the management in order to manage those cows well. So we need to consider that one very carefully. But in future visions, increasing cow numbers will increase profitability because you're increasing your feed efficiencies. And then there's milk volume. And we've got a huge influence over milk volume. So nutrition is an obvious one, so feed efficiencies definitely need to go in that bucket. Another one is disease losses. Again, same one, we can decrease disease losses and we can increase the volume of milk. Sometimes milk technologies will increase the volume of milk. So things like robots that can increase frequency of milking. So 3 times daily milking is another way of increasing volume. Other technologies, such as pharmaceutical technologies, these can increase volume of milk. And the other one that we've already mentioned is fertility. So reproduction can also increase volume of milk, but over longer periods of time. So there are many ways that we can manage the volume of milk. Of course, other things like heat abatement and management decisions, feed access, water access, all of those things can increase our volume of milk as well. So this is where we can hugely influence that number. If we're talking about influencing the volume of milk and influencing profit, one way to influence profit is to decrease costs. Now beware about this one, because it's very tempting to choose the wrong things to get rid of when we're looking to cut costs. So what we need to do, it's very easy to look at feed and cut out feed additives when the milk price gets low and the costs of production get high. However, what we really need to do is look at the evidence behind all of those things, all of the interventions, all of the feed additives, to see what to get rid of wisely. So cutting feed additives like live yeasts or monensin or other things that influence diseases and disease losses, like decad diets for instance, would be very bad things to cut out, because these protect marginal profit, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So cutting things out is a bit like a fisherman deciding not to mend the nets. He cuts his costs, but he's not going to catch any fish. So it's the same kind of thing. Don't get rid of feed additives that push marginal milk, or silage inoculants for instance, or any of those things that are tempting to get rid of, because they do push marginal milk. So let's introduce marginal milk. I do have another video that looks more deeply into this, but marginal milk really is all about the lactation curve. Again, I have a video that goes more deeply into that one. But when you think about the lactation curve, generally speaking, it's a range. So we target our feed to a specific average. But this is a herd average. So let's say that we, for instance, target our TMR at 28 or 30 litres. If we do that, then our TMR costs roughly 65% of the milk price. So it's a huge cost. And that milk is therefore only 35% profitable. Now remember, the TMR is an average, and it includes maintenance, pregnancy and growth of all of the animals. But what if we could push that average up and keep the same TMR? Then the extra milk that we've made only costs the feed energy, the amount of feed that it takes for the energy for that extra literage of milk, plus the intervention that we've done. So for instance, if we increase by 1.5 litres, then that's roughly 7.5 megajoules of energy. That, in terms of feed, has only cost us around 30% of the milk price. In which case that extra 1.5 litres is actually 70% profitable, which is double the profit of the rest of the 30 litres that we're paying for feed for. And this is why marginal milk can increase your yearly income by influencing that by a matter of small percentages, but those small percentages mean a lot to the dairy business. It's growth year on year. And that is why with marginal milk it's very important to look at the lactation curve frequently of the herd to see how we're influencing that and what the scatter is, or the range is, around the average, so that we can influence that and try and make it more efficient by decreasing the range and increasing the average. And this hugely influences our marginal profits. We've spoken about future compound profit, and we'll talk about this in another video. But remember that if we can do that year on year and protect that profit, then we actually make a little more money on that due to compound interest than we thought we were making. So we're actually becoming more sustainable for the future. In summary then, we've talked about 3 forms of profit: cash flow, which determines what you can afford at this point in time. We've talked about profitability and marginal profit and the extra value that marginal profit gives. And we've also talked about future profit. So the secret to it all is to monitor, to manage for your margin. Remember the 3 M's, and hopefully we can build our dairy businesses together. So if you've liked this video, then please indicate down below, press subscribe and the bell notifications so that you can get notified when any new videos come your way. Thank you very much for listening. This has been Inspire Cows, the channel dedicated to dairy health, and we'll see you again.